Many times today, these are products we use every day. Women use on average 12 products a day. As you mentioned, teenage girls use on average 14 products every day. And the reason we are concerned about this issue is because of this repeat use. These are products we rub on our bodies every day, and it's that question of whether or not we're passing some threshold of risk that is unacceptable that we need FDA to help us examine and, if warranted, regulate. And as you've also heard, cosmetic companies can put just about any chemical in any amount into these products, including chemicals linked to cancer like formaldehyde or chemicals linked to reproductive harm like phthalates. Cosmetic companies have told regulators that they now use 93 different chemicals linked to cancer, reproductive harm, or developmental harm. And while companies are required by a 1975 rule to substantiate the safety of their products, they don't have to share those substantiation records with anyone, including the FDA. And many of the studies that these companies rely upon are not independent studies, but are instead studies conducted by the industry's own review program, which is funded by and housed in the industry's trade association. So it's suffice to say, this situation does not inspire a lot of confidence among consumers or, I think, lawmakers. And even if skeptical consumers did want to shop around this problem, they can't, because literally thousands of these chemicals can be hidden behind the word fragrance. So just to sort of summarize, these companies can pretty much add anything they want to these products in any amount. They can rely on their own studies to substantiate the safety of those products. They can refuse to disclose those studies to the public and to FDA, as we heard from Dr. Main this morning. And they can refuse to disclose whether some dangerous chemicals are in the products on the label. And what's more, as we've heard, companies don't have to, although many do, and most do, I expect, don't have to produce these products in a safe and clean environment. And when things do go wrong and products are contaminated, cosmetic companies don't have to tell anyone about that either, including the FDA. And even when their products are hurting people, for example, when facial powders marketed to teen girls are contaminated with asbestos, FDA cannot order a mandatory recall. In other words, FDA has no way to know when things go wrong and no power to act when they do. So I think we can all agree that it's time to fix this system. And in particular, I think we can agree on 6 things. First, I think we can all agree that FDA should be required to review the most dangerous chemicals in personal care products. I think we can all agree that consumers should have the right to know whether these products have chemicals of concern. I think we can all agree that FDA should have access to safety records and be notified when products are so contaminated or so dangerous that people are literally losing their hair, as thousands of women and girls did recently after using popular shampoo. Fourth, to avoid contamination, I think we can all agree that companies should adopt good manufacturing practices and be forced to police their supply chains, especially their foreign supply chains. Fifth, I think it's clear that FDA should have the power to act if people are getting hurt and a company is not acting responsibly. And last, I'll just mention that I think it's clear that Congress has to recognize the difference between big companies like Revlon and Procter & Gamble and the small entrepreneurs who are just getting into this business. A lot has changed since 1938. Congress has decided to regulate chemicals in food, chemicals in colors. We've chosen to regulate pesticides to reduce the risks from repeat exposures. We recently modernized TSCA to properly review industrial chemicals. But despite the enormous growth of the cosmetics industry, we are still relying on a law that is badly out of date. Last thing I'll just mention is that retailers and manufacturers have demonstrated that we don't need many of these chemicals to make products that are safe and that fulfill the expectations of consumers. Big manufacturers and small manufacturers, retailers have already begun to produce products without many of these chemicals of concern, really demonstrating that these chemicals are really no longer necessary to provide products that consumers want. So, Madam Chair, thank you again for holding this historic hearing, and I'm happy to take your questions.